so now you're live on camera now. Live to the world.
Okay. Good morning and welcome to another edition of SF Lives. My name is Jenna Littlejohn, former assistant manager here at Beckett, where we're live streaming from, and current member of the working class. Okay, this morning we're going to be talking to Ramsey Robinson, an organizer with the Party for Socialism and Liberation, also known as the PSL. And Ramsey is a mental health worker here in San Francisco, has been organizing with the PSL for 4 years. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. PSL, socialism, and just diving in and having a dialogue. Author Denise Sullivan normally does SF Lives, but I'm filling in today, so bear with me. I'm going to do my best to interview you, but I think it's going to go really well.
Guaranteed home run.
Yeah, that's right. So, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having the PSL, being able to represent always any space for real, to get on a mic and, talk about the situation we're in. And not just talk about, I'm not even talking about the political climate going on right now, although obviously that's
part of it.
Taking us to a very difficult situation to just live a day-to-day life, but then just even the bigger things that are going on, with the limited time we have with the planet, to be able to not just talk about that, but to actually talk about real solutions to it and how we can make our lives better on a very day-to-day practical way, and just make sure that humans keep going on.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big problem. I think we have a bit of a block. Things aren't really sustainable under this current system of capitalism. So that's kind of the whole point. We need something new.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned capitalism too. But let's say that word, because
let's start there.
Because it was, I think again, it's really powerful, like, to know. Because we all are struggling so much in different ways, and on whatever, like, it's a social, mental health social worker, like meso, micro, macro, like on the micro level, just waking up in the morning, whatever we're doing, struggling to pay bills, being a broken tooth or a broken axle away from like getting into debt, to on the meso and people really struggling out there.
Every morning there's a lot of suspense for us. You don't know.
How so?
With like being, maybe one paycheck away from not, having your apartment or, having to go into debt to like pay your rent or whatever, things, that kind of suspense is a little stressful.
No, for sure. We don't. And, I lived so many of my years not knowing how fragile my life was, not like so many of us. And this is why it's so crazy. They're thinking that the current administration, which is part of a bigger economic system called capitalism, is thinking about the Medicare, Medicaid cuts.
Yeah.
And okay, so now more people are going to be suffering. More people are going to be getting into medical debt. I learned just this last year that the number one factor for homelessness is medical debt. I didn't know that.
It's medical
debt. And so now which is just so illogical. It's going to put more stress on the system anyways. But, it's not a logical system. Capitalism is not a logical system. It literally, its mechanics are, it's inevitably gonna destroy itself and everything around it, pull down everything. So anyways, to learn that, and it was only 4 years ago that I learned, what is the source of our problems on a day-to-day level. Like you're saying, every morning we get up and we're worried about, there's literally half a dozen things.
There's something stressful going on.
Got to be.
And it's caused by this system.
Got to be. And so to know the root and the source of all of our problems, all of them, is very liberating.
Yes.
And then like the Party for Socialism and Liberation is socialism. It what other form could it come in? The PSL believes than the opposite of capitalism, the contrary to capitalism. So to actually have that to talk about too, or
Yeah, no,
it's exciting.
absolutely. And we're going to really get into that, but it would be great to maybe hear a little bit about like what brings you to this work, your personal background and how you started organizing with the PSL. Yeah.
Yeah, I was I think like two things were going on. Well, to cut to the chase, one was like the really real material circumstances of my life. Like I was getting very primed for like, even if the interview stops here, like what we talked about already, I'm happy with. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We just defined capitalism. We just talked about what it does, and we talked about its is it antithesis? I don't know. It's opposite, which is socialism, which we could talk more about that. But for me, I was really getting like primed, or like a garden when you start to break up the earth, because of just because of capitalism and because of being a worker, which you had said part of the working class, and I think we hear that phrase so much, working class, but to really break it down, we actually, that puts us in a class, a certain grouping of people that we have to work or we're gonna die. You know what I'm saying? And probably about 4 years before I met the party, I remember you talking about how I came to the party. About 4 years, I was like, oh, if I don't if I don't get some money in like 2 weeks, I'm not gonna be able to feed my physical organism. Like it really hit me. I remember it so specific because I was living in this unregulated space, no showers, trying to get through school. Actually, this was even before that, but I was still living in unregulated spaces because Los Angeles is so expensive. I was living in LA at the time. And my boy Chambo, shout out to Chambo, gonna see him in a week. He's a father, by the way.
Awesome.
He was like, hey, unfortunately, his mom, well, I won't put his business out on the streets, but he had to go back east. So he's like, hey, you can stay in my place, because he knew my living space. So I remember staying there, and it was a really dope spot in Silver Lake.
Oh,
and
that's nice.
and so I'm chilling, but I'm also realizing, if I don't work, figure something out, and I'm willing to work, I'm not going to be able to eat, And so this is stuff that really primed me, and just, working year after year after year. Nothing wrong with work. Work is so dignified.
Yeah.
Everything around us, these bookshelves, the ceiling, this space, this block, everything was made by workers.
Right.
But when you're willing to work, like all of us are, or so many of us are, 40 hours a week plus, some of us work way more than 40 hours a week, 60, 80,
100.
and the majority of us, for sure, the majority, no question, numerically, are still struggling to just make like these basic things happen in our lives, like being able to cover rent, being able to eat. The price of food has gone so much up, inflation, right? And there's so much to say about what inflation is. That's a capitalist trick that there's no, anyways.
But people deserve to have these things, their needs met, without overextending themselves to the point of, oh, well, I've worked so hard this week, I hurt my leg. Now I'm getting, I don't know, a surgery on my leg, medical debt, boom, right? It's mounting pressure, even though everything should just kind of work out. You shouldn't have to go into debt because you got hurt on the job or after work or whatever it is, and then you can't work, right? It all hinges upon work, but then work isn't enough to maintain.
I'm so glad you said that, and that's one of the, to me, like practically rooted hope is what you're saying. Is that there is no excuse now to be specific to the most basic things of being a human, like having shelter, right? Like we're in right now. If it's rainy or cold or too hot,
we're lucky
having shelter. And
why are we so
well,
lucky?
actually, we are lucky, but and food, but there's no excuse for that now. There's as I learned just a couple years ago. I mean, it's not just through the party, but this fact of that there's 500,000 homeless people in the country. 500,000. Although I did read recently that there's 2.3 million that go through homelessness a year, right? So they might experience times of right?
Yeah,
so let's even take 2.3 million. But on the other side, there's 17 million empty homes in this country. 17 million. So there's no excuse that people, if you want to be sheltered, that you have a shelter. There's no excuse that there's 30 million people who deal with hunger in this country when you have agribusiness, and agriculture should not be a business, overproducing so much food
Right.
that it's too cheap for them to make a profit. So they're actually dumping out food, slaughtering cattle, to drive the prices up. When you have people that are like, again, it's. But I want to stick with what you said, which is so hopeful, is that okay, well, now we know there's no excuse for it either.
Yeah.
It's not like we're living in a time of scarcity. So what's holding us back now? The bottleneck is capitalism, and that is a system that we need to organize to uproot and change. It's not gonna just happen and just roll over to socialism.
Right.
It needs us to push it there but
Yeah.
we can have socialism in this country. Like, we could get it cracking right now. It's capitalism that we have to change.
Yeah.
And we have to organize on all these different issues that we're talking about, whether it's healthcare, whether it's education, however capitalism affects our lives, whether it's war, the bombing of Gaza, whatever brings us together, and we can link that to capitalism.
Oh, yeah.
20. I know I'm on a little talking jack here, but I do need
No,
to just
that's
get this
okay.
out.
This is good.
Was it $3 billion a year? $3 billion of workers' tax money that goes to a genocide. Forget the genocide for a second, which we shouldn't forget. We're not going to forget
Right.
this, and the PSLs in the streets were
Yeah, see where you're
Palestine,
going,
like
though.
all we are.
Yeah.
But just for, like, what about that 2.3 billion whatever used here to alleviate hunger, or we don't even have to alleviate hunger. How we're saying it's all there. So yeah, we don't have to alleviate no hunger. We need to alleviate capitalism out of here, so we
Right.
can redistribute that wealth, so that we all have these basic things. We could all have it. All of us right here in this bookstore right now could have it. The people watching.
It could just be a bit more equitable, and that's kind of one of the driving, components of socialism. So it would be great to hear from you. If we could define this kind of
Yeah.
large term and system for people who might not quite, have their bearings on this. So let's start with that.
That's so dope. Yeah, I mean, I think you can riff on it a little, and there's so many different
Oh, yeah.
facets of what socialism is. But simply put, like, if people walk away from the live stream right now, which I hope they don't, but or if they're having technical difficulties and things fall down, or
Yeah.
for them to know that socialism is a political and economic system. It's where you put people over profit, in that order, right? It's not like with capitalism where you're putting profit over everything, which is reshaping how we look at everything. We don't look at food as something to feed ourselves. We look at it as a commodity. We don't look at healthcare as a way to keep us healthy. We look at it as a way to make a profit. A health insurance company is making a profit. Right? So
Profit-driven.
Profit-driven. So socialism is flipping it just upside down. It's inverse, and making sure people's needs are met first, and then we could talk about profit. But people's needs are being put forth first, and that but not just that, but that working class people like us, folk like us, we have the economic and political power, right? Instead of this tiny class of people who have it now, and with that political power, and you mentioned this, that we have dignity and security, that we
it's
have
simple.
food, clothes, shelter, healthcare. We'll put childcare in there, right? So, some basic things that we know that are a guaranteed right. That should be a constitutional right.
Yeah, longer parental leave.
All of that
Yeah,
too.
I mean,
All that, and shelter and food should be a constitutional right.
Yeah.
So, anyways, socialism is that, and we're, us folk are using our political and economic power to ensure that people in the planet are taken care of. And I'm not just throwing in the planet because it sounds good. It's like we were saying earlier in the interview, if we don't stop this carbon emission thing that's happening, no one is disagreeing that there's the point of no return, as it's called. Even the far right wing under Trump's first presidency put out a statement during Thanksgiving, because they didn't want people to see what it is. It's basically saying, hey, there is a point of no return. There's when CO2 is going to saturate the atmosphere so much that it's a wrap. We're not going back.
Yeah.
What a shame. No
Yeah.
more books, no more ideas, no more mythology, no more anything. Field guides, no more
terrifying.
San Francisco, no more the West, no more Native America, no more natural. Everything's done. Well, natural history, the planet will keep going.
Yeah.
But right, the Earth will be okay, but we won't
Yeah.
be.
And that doesn't sound very good. And I think a lot of us can get behind, humans continuing to be alive.
Please.
But we need a
Let's
different
go
way,
humans.
right?
It has to be, and it has to be social. There's no, what other way is there? Oh no, there's no other. As George Jackson said, I believe it was Blood in My Eye. George Jackson, who was in prison, got a 1 to life for stealing like $74 in robbery, right?
Yeah.
And
What's new?
In prison, started getting exposed to just what we're saying now, socialism, right? Getting exposed to people who have written about it, like Marx or Engels or Fanon or Ho Chi Minh or Mao or Che or Fidel. People have used socialism to actually improve our circumstances at every little level. And so, anyways.
And what's interesting
ideas.
about that is like you're saying all these people, and I don't remember personally learning about this in school. And so that brings us to another topic.
One of those names in school. Not one of those names.
Not one. Okay, and that's a little discouraging. I think it'd be nice to talk about, or maybe riff on the fact that socialism is not easy for people to digest because you don't really get to learn about these important figures and these important movements that were driven by the system. Why? I mean, why do you think that is?
Let's look at Cuba as an example, right? 80 miles off the coast of Florida, 90 miles off the coast of Florida, right?
Yeah, it's close by.
When the U.S. was latched on there, sucking it dry, prostitution was out of control. Well, it doesn't even have to be out of control. Just prostitution, period, there's no need for that, right? Poverty levels, literacy rates were awful, because the U.S. was like it's as if literally, but not literally or literally, latching onto that little island and just sucking it dry for all its resources. And when people, which looked like us, by the way, like sitting here in these chairs, stood up and said, "Get out of here. Get off our backs, stop sucking us dry," and fought and kicked out capitalism in 1959 and eventually put into place socialism by early 1960s, maybe 1960. Put in socialism in place and look what happened. Prostitution eliminated. Literacy rates equaled or better than the U.S. Equal or better than the U.S. Right?
Wow.
They have 0% homelessness now. When I was getting over here, taking a mix of different types of transportation, the homeless people all over. What's it? You like, right? They have none of that. They have some of the best doctors in the world. They have free education, not $300 a book. Like you know what I'm saying? We gotta.
The textbooks are costly. Yes.
Not to mention the tens of thousands of dollars, right? So, anyways, you're asking about why we're not hearing about socialism, because it's such a threat
to this way of life. To
this way of life, we're a small little. There's only 700 billionaires in the country. 700 people are hoarding all this wealth, and it's not their wealth. It's what we are creating. All that wealth, and then it's going up to them, and then they're breaking us off just a little crumb, literally just enough to survive. Sure, you could say they give a little more of us sometimes.
Yeah.
So we. And that we could get. We probably don't have the time to talk about how they try to divide our class.
The psychology behind that is
but so no, they're trying to do everything to prevent socialism. Let's get it out more because they don't want that. They try to just look at the history of the U.S. of what they did in the 50s with McCarthyism, which I kind of vaguely heard about as a kid, and the Red Scare and all this stuff.
Right.
Where,
Yeah.
where
But
you're,
also didn't really hear about that much either.
where you're like people talking like I'm talking right now, and I come back from summer break, and I don't have a job, and I'm like, oh cool, hey, I'm a social worker, I'll find something. There's a need for social worker. You know, so, interesting. No one's returning my calls. No one's responding to me. Right. So, besides imprisoning people, besides murdering and assassinating, there's a great, excellent documentary called I think it's called The Murder of Fred Hampton, who's a young brother, 20 years old, that believed in just what we've talked about so far for 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And the CIA is documenting that they're putting out. It's public information. The CIA murdered this brother for talking about and organizing people. Actually, really, that's what they murdered
That was
for.
the big threat for them.
Organizing, and so that's why we got to keep organized too. But anyways, that's why we haven't heard socialism, because it's gonna mess up everything that they got going.
Right.
Those
A select
small
few,
clans.
right? And so that's the problem. I understand people want to have it all, but what would be so wrong with sharing a bit and maybe distributing wealth in a different way with a different system? Why it is such a threat to, again, just a select few. So yeah, the moral component of this is like hard,
Oh man,
I think, for me to wrap my brain around.
And I think about this. I wonder if they themselves, because they're actual people with faces and names that eat like they drink coffee like us. They have like ham and cheese sandwiches. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like us. Like
yeah.
are they immoral? Are they not? I mean, probably some are. Probably some are. For sure, the system is immoral.
Right.
It degradates every aspect. It's like it's like the reverse Midas touch.
Yeah.
And it, like, whatever it puts its hands on, and wants to touch everything. It's not leaving anything off, and everything it touches, it just turns to just disintegrates into
right. And
into
we're used to
profit.
it.
And
That's the problem. We're all very used to it. Like you're saying, like these select, few who, billionaires, right? Let's call people, they're billionaires. It might be hard to grasp that amount of wealth and power is so unfortunate, and it has such repercussions on such a small or such a large group of people. So I think, again, capitalism, we're all used to it, but again, there's like this awakening. There's this realization that this is not sustainable. I'm not trying to wake up, not me personally, I'm just talking like someone else, but I am struggling to feel good. And I feel like that's a huge part of this. Like, we are just, as a society, as a nation, at each other's throats all the time. People are stressed. People don't have what they need. How can the PSL and other groups, sort of penetrate the American mind? What is the strategy to get people on board with this? Like, how does a PSL move to make this more reality?
Well, just
for people who don't know, like, how does a PSL work?
Yeah. Well, I want to start by saying that what you just like articulated and broke down is what the PSL believes is one of the main factors of that's going to get us to where we want to get us to socialism. If we agree of what socialism is by the definition that we put out, which I know me and you do, and we agree that it's better than capitalism, and it'd be better in all aspects of well-being, of measurement of human well-being, right?
Yeah.
Okay, then how do we get there, right? Is the question. That's kind of what you're asking.
Yeah.
And well, that is what you're asking. And the PSL just through. Well, there's three aspects. One is just what you said, more and more of it, like you said, kind of a awakening, and it's
Right.
like, but in a practical way of, like you're saying, we're turning around, we're waking up, and we're saying, oh dang, like I have like, well, first of all, it's very reflective of who's saying what, but so many of us are like struggling in some way, right?
Yeah.
And there's these things that are happening, like the environmental crisis that we brought up, right? That's starting to perk us up, right?
Yeah,
There's the fact that those of us who basically struggled with so little which are the majority of us, right? 30 million Americans struggle with hunger, right? What do we say? 500,000 are homeless, 2.3 deal with homelessness. Basically a third to a half of our whole population, if you really break down the metrics of poverty or living in poverty, right?
Yeah.
So all these things are starting to crush down on us, right?
Yeah.
And so that's starting to happen. AI is in full swing now, right?
Yes,
That's
yes.
interesting. Us coming up and growing up and seeing like how AI has been, and it's not. It could be used to alleviate suffering and alleviate poverty and alleviate some of the soul crushing aspects of work.
Yes,
But instead,
yes.
it's because we live in a right. It's used to. It's just driving more people out, right? So
Yeah.
capitalism, right, is the system that both the Democrats and the Republicans are under, right?
Right.
So we talk
love
about
it.
Medicare, and I just saw this. Not only are they taking billions out for Medicaid, they're talking about, but that it would mean 200,000 job losses. That's almost a quarter of a million, and more people were going to lose their jobs, right?
Right.
Who like the majority of my life, I wasn't even like, working. I'm like scraping by, but now you could say as a social worker, oh, what? That's starting to get compromised.
Yeah.
So all these things are starting to push us towards where, okay, this is a situation. If we're talking about how do we get there, and what is the PCL talking about, and then I think the main thing is also, like these really the problems that capitalism is causing is going to get us all motivated and organized and together. And then on top of that, the masses, more and more of us globally that are affected by capitalism that are going to be pushed into a group and starting to fight back. And then third is what you're saying. I think it is a specific party, right? That's in this mix. It's like trying to be a super sharp spear of like articulating and talking about what we're talking about today, spreading socialist consciousness in the country, right? But also talking about it, yes, but also engaging and intervening in all these struggles that are affecting us, which the
Right.
PSO has been doing, obviously in the We Fight Back coalition, which is that's
Could
an
you
amazing
talk
coalition.
about that coalition and like the kind of the things not underneath it, but that operate in unison with it?
Listen, this is a coalition that's basically people who are like who are wanting to activate, wanting to fight, wanting to do something because of what how bad this administration, and which is under capitalism, is making it for more and more people, and saying no, we have to fight back. So there's organizations there that aren't socialists at all. The majority of these organizations aren't socialists, but it's a grouping of organizations and people that could come together and see through any possible differences we may have. I don't even know if we really do.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
but
yeah.
to agree on a couple things, right? And that obviously this billionaire agenda, this current administration, it has to be put in check and it has to be really stopped, right? And coming together, not just on a flyer with all the names, but like
Right.
intervening in all these struggles. I mean, there's at the
The
time of
unity
this recording,
is essential.
have to be. We have to, because that's the greatest tactic that capitalism is going to use to keep socialism away, is dividing us in every possible way that it can divide us.
Right.
And it has done that historically to black people and white people and all kind of it. This is the number one thing it thrives on, or even dividing workers, making think some workers that are more quote unquote skilled,
Right.
and maybe they have a little something right there. They're different than other. They want to divide it, and so our powerful tool in the way that PSL suggests, not PSL, but any movement that has gotten traction, it's happened from unity and
Right.
people clicking up and getting out there in the streets and pushing. And the We Fight Back campaign has already had 2 demonstrations, over a couple thousand people coming, and we're, like you're saying, we're communicating with each other. As I was saying at the time of this recording, Los Angeles has just been experiencing some ICE raids, man, and that we're in coordination to see if it's going to come up here, and we're ready to be out there in the streets and saying no, we don't support this,
Right. Yeah.
and using our First Amendment rights to speech and the right to gather and link up and speak out on the mic, speak out and link up and take over the streets, as we've done for Palestine dozens of times, not the PSL, but in coalition with so many people. But as our class has over for since the country started. It
Right.
was black people that picked
This
up
isn't
arms.
new. This isn't new.
Say that.
And it's an important to the PSL is really good. I would like to shout out to this party is really good at educating its members and people who are not members. I mean, it just really has like a far-reaching and effective program of education. And I think that might also be a huge component
Yeah.
of getting socialism out there. And
Has to be. And you're so gracious, like saying that and pointing that out.
oh,
And-
I've
and-
enjoyed the webinars.
That's
yeah.
what's
After
up.
work,
That's
you
what's
know,
up.
sometimes after work, what do you want to do? Okay, you want to watch TV.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, no, not today. 3 Wednesdays in a row. It's escaping me the name of the education series. But
Was it
anyway,
the immigration ones?
yes.
Those were amazing.
And that was looking back in history
I'm not
of,
just saying that
of
either.
movements and times where, you know, again, you learn about imperialism and colonization and what people did to fight back against that. Instead of watching Netflix, it's actually really not only entertaining because it's liberating to know that it can happen again, but it's just the truth. So let's educate ourselves. Let's feed ourselves a narrative that doesn't just say, well, you only have one option. Like, no, all of us mofos have a lot of options. Not people,
Hey, you know that,
not mofos.
and just to shout out, you know, like liberationnews.org. I think it's org.
Yeah.
Liberation School.
Amazing.
Tons of stuff. Breaking the Chains, feminist magazine, all women produced magazine talking about breaking the chains.
I don't know. I'm not familiar.
I'll hook you up with a copy. Super dope. That and there's so many ways. And just a shout out actually. And you know, having mentioned that you know it's the basically the crises of capitalism. It's the masses responding to that, and it's having a party. Like just to not even shout out the PSL, but to invite people to, if I may, just 2 things. You know, if you're at a place where you want to fight, that you want to start giving your life force energy towards this, which the people in the PSL are absolutely doing. We're putting this, even if it's not just, but if it's educating, we're putting all this struggling, getting on the streets, we're putting this above anything else in our lives.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
to that's how important it is for us to do this. And, you know, to if folks want to check out and feel that way. And if they're not, there's also the Action Network, which is amazing. And I want to mention it. If you go to PSL, I think it's pslweb.org/action and just check it out. And, you know, many of us, there's so many circumstances where we can't be out there, you know,
Right.
giving our everything to the thing,
lot
but
of
we still want to
reasons.
get down. So, you know, the Action Network, you're getting that education. You're being invited to monthly webinars.
Yeah.
You're being put in communication to things. If you do want to come out and get in the streets, that's happening. So, you know, and this is what we need to do, because we do need to build a mass movement. There's no question now. We and I do want to say, there's no question now. We ain't, obviously the Republicans, we've been knowing that, right? What have they done historically? I mean, we can get into that even, but you know, deregulation and tax cuts for the rich, right? So no, and then but we ain't swinging back to the Democrats, who now we have, you know, who is just as genocidal, literally as right. Whether, and when I was coming up, I remember Clinton was president, you know, and I was young, but realizing what him and the Democratic Party adversely did to black people with the crime bill and disproportionately putting black and brown folk in prison, cutting. It was under Clinton that you know, Trump has cut like 120,000 federal jobs, but Clinton cut 500,000 during his 2 terms, right? I mean, on and on and on again. I mean, you know, so we need a mass movement, a third party, a third grouping politically. And there's others out there. There's the Peace and Freedom Party that have for decades been able to even keep ballot status going, so we can even have the, you know, socialism as an idea, or in actuality too, just keep out there, just even keep on the, when you're voting, you know, we do have options, but we have to link up in mass,
Right.
whatever vehicle we use.
Yeah. I love that. And I think that that's extremely important. And it's kind of been the method over time. It doesn't completely matter if, yeah, the beliefs, you have to just unify
Yeah.
and keep going. And the Peace and Freedom Party, could you talk a bit more about that in relation to the PSL?
I've just been learning about it, but
Okay.
well, I should say I've been knowing about it since Claudia de la Cruz ran, and Karina Garcia, and they are PSL party members. If you go on, and please go on votesocialist2024.com, I think, or org, and the PSL was able, through the Peace and Freedom Party that had ballot access. It's hard to get ballot access, right?
Right.
Because you got to, why? Because we live under capitalism. You have to have millions of dollars, or you have to collect so many signatures. It's so hard to just even get a third party on there. But the Peace and Freedom did that with people just like us back in the summer of 1967, when people just like us were starting to see images of like brown bodies getting torn apart in the Vietnam War, and it's like this is crazy. We can't. What is going on? And so people got together and said, this has to stop, the war. And the Democrats were even blocking Democratic nominees, people running that were anti-war. So
Right.
but
See.
but yeah, it's really important to say that the Democrats were blocking people running as Democrats saying, I'm anti-war.
It's ridiculous.
And so the PFP at that time was like, okay, let's do this. And man, and they pushed and pushed, and they needed 67,000 signatures, and 2 months before they needed 200,000 signatures. Excuse me, no, they needed 67,000. 2 months before they needed 67,000, they only had they didn't have enough, and it was looking like a wrap. And then the Black Panthers linked up. And in 2 months, they got over 200,000 signatures, right? Which the Black Panthers, by the way, people don't be knowing, a socialist group, right? Believed in food, clothes. Look at the 10-point program: food, clothes, shelter, healthcare, jobs, right? So
comprehensive, amazing. Yeah.
So, anyways, the PFP got on that, through there, and just thugging it out every election cycle, either getting enough votes or getting enough signatures to keep on there. And so, Claudia and Karina talking that socialism, like I said on their platform. The first one on there, which is this is why I'm so proud to be a PSL member. The first on their platform, I think, was seize the top 100 corporations.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Saying, and you think about that, that sounds so gangster, but it's like, what does that mean? Okay, yeah, let's take the wealth. That's our wealth anyways.
Right.
That's wealth also from the enslavement of forced enslavement of Black people.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
The murdering and of the native population for resources that got carried up. Let's take that back and seize it and carry out a socialist.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's the Peace and Freedom Party. That's the PSL's relationship to it, at least for Claudia and Karina for the 2024 presidential election.
Platform for ballot access.
It gives, and they're a socialist party
And been around for a long time.
and let's
So this
let's
isn't
highlight
new.
that.
We just need people to understand that it's not new and hear about it, learn about it. So again, that is the point of today.
Thank you. Thank you for
No, it's amazing.
this out.
So I think it would be great to talk about how the PSL organizes, because again, very effective, right? And I'm going to be honest, I didn't really know a lot about the PSL until much more recently. I'd say the last 2 years. But so there seems to be more organizing, getting out there more because of these, international atrocities and genocide and all the, horrible things. But how have the PSL just gotten so much more prominent, at least to my mind, seems more prominent, or has it always been this way, and just, maybe the recent things are bringing you all into the fold? And
Hey, you know what? Gotta shout out PYM, Palestinian Youth Movement. And I say that again to highlight how you know, we got to link up. You know what I'm saying? One of the ways I think that, well, two things. One is the PSL has decades of people that have been continuing the struggle and have just learned. Like I'm saying, that's why the PSL thinks that third piece of it to get to socialism is we need like a sharp socialist party, because the party can retain the lessons that we've learned. You know, the party has people who are dedicating their lives to analyzing current conditions, analyzing past historical conditions, right?
Yeah.
Looking at how things are changing now, how to update and reapply certain things. How they have the experience and the memory in the cell bank, the cells of the party, of what it's like to do coalition building, right?
Yeah.
How to bring out and you know, highlight certain things, right? Like if we're anti-war, it's not just anti-war; it's showing the connection between war and capitalism, right?
Right.
If we're fighting for like trans rights, it's not just like, well, it is fighting for trans rights, but it's showing how under socialism, like trans rights would be magnified, like what, like to me again, black liberation, tying it to black liberation. To me, who's not liberated, whether you're trans or black or however, if you have food, clothes, shelter, healthcare, education, a dignified job. These are things that, right? So socialism is what's going to tie us to all together, bind us together.
Yeah.
And I think that the PSL is, it's not if we're not good or not good at it, it's that's our intention. That's always on the forefront and linking up. And I just mentioned PYM because I think that, like, you know, the movement for a free Palestine has really linked, you know, PSL and PYM and so many other amazing organizations that have been linking up, and through linking up been able to put this out as people know what's up. That the narrative for Palestine is forever changed. It ain't going back in the toothpaste tube after you squeeze it out, no matter where you stand on the issue.
Yeah.
You know, and
that's due to the good work of all these multiple groups.
All these
mobilizing.
multiple groups. And again, it's just the party, or those are just the thing, you know, it's all the people coming out behind it. And that's why you got to mention when George Floyd got murdered and how 35 million of us, you think that was all party members? That wasn't all PSL or PYM out there. It was 35 multinational, multi-generation of us came out during COVID for 6 weeks in the streets and you know, so we've experienced that feeling of what it's been like, seeing tanks down the street. When LA was popping off. I remember this job I was having during the time, because I was deemed a essential worker. I won't say what kind of work I was doing, but being out and about and seeing, like, you know, tanks rolling in there and people in riot gear and seeing how we weren't backing down and we were linking, you know, black liberation to me, and if I may, my daddy's black. If I may, as a black person, say to me, say that to me, black liberation is those things that we talk about when you know, when we have these basic necessities covered, when we black people and multinational, all of us together have the economic and political power, and that's why we all got to link up. That's why, you know, they don't want us, you know, shoot. There's some when I was born, or when my parents got married. There's some states still where it was illegal for them to get married. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
They put. Then I'm glad I mentioned that, because I've been learning that, and that's when it's secret to me. It's not just like, oh, racism or this or that. No, it's like legal components where you're not legally allowed to use. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like
the separation is ingrained into law.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's been the whole.
Yeah.
The whole point of keeping us separate so we can't unify and do this good work.
Say that.
But again, it has happened, like with George Floyd. People, I mean, that was one of the most emotional and obviously deeply depressing and upsetting, but also emotional in this, like, kind of grand way to see all of these people. Yeah. So upset. I remember here at Burton Beckett, we had all the people in this neighborhood were like, we need books. We need books about Black liberation. Like, I need to educate myself today because I am so effed up over this, and it's like, how do we continue that momentum when certain things, oh, okay, so maybe this isn't like a problem to me anymore, right? That momentum, it ebbs and flows. And what I admire about the PSL is like, it feels like they have not collectively, we have not been slowing down. And I think that's really important and incredible. Just so props to you. And
that's what's up.
No, it's been
PSL for sure.
Beautiful to watch.
Yeah, it's what's beautiful to watch is not just the PSL, although that too, but people and I was one of them too just 4 years ago, like who had never, like people coming into the struggle. You know what I'm saying? And you see people's lives being transformed.
Yeah.
Through struggle. And like you were saying, we've always been doing it. Like, as you said, our class has always been doing this back from, Black and brown people working together, you know what I'm saying? For Black freedom, during the Civil War, like I'm saying, I'm talking about resistance and fighting, they like to say it's like, Lincoln freed the slaves or, bestowed that. No, there's correspondence between Lincoln and Grant that said if Black people weren't brought into the war, the North would have lost. Up into the 50s and 60s, the Civil Rights era, also multinational movement driven by Black people. Of course, getting out there, putting their lives, literally lives on the line to be fighting. It wasn't. They pushed the politicians that were under capitalism at that time to get the Civil Rights Act passed. Right? Yeah. The Voters' Right Act. They pushed them. They didn't just do that because it's like, oh, you would think, right? That's the ethical thing to do. Oh, everyone should write. Well, like women not being able to, half our population not being able to vote until the 1920s. That was people coming together. I've seen pictures of people out in the streets taking off whole streets of women and men together, right?
Right.
So women would have the right to vote. We keep doing it in the 60s and 70s with Black liberation movement, Black power movement, taking up arms, which were gutted by the CIA, and it's so much, and it's this oppression, and it's just gonna get us.
I mean,
hot and bothered to keep fighting back.
Keep fighting back.
That's
exactly.
what we do.
And wouldn't it be nice to not really have to fight? Wouldn't it be nice for this new system or something like it to take hold, and all of us to just feel good and be connected and not isolated or overworked and underpaid? Like, I'm like, when you guys, we got to do this is what I'm trying to tell everyone. And it's vital because this is not sustainable.
I really appreciate you. I really appreciate you talking about it. There's so much worth and value in talking about and imagining what our lives would be like, not under capitalism, but under social, just like you're saying. And there are, like, it is a struggle. It's gonna it's not gonna happen. And like, yes, we have to pause and talk about what would transportation look like? What would healthcare look like? What would spending time? What would art look like? What would literature look like? Even having
having the space and time to kind of imagine these things, which I know people have done over and over again. And it's not all about the actual work involved, but it's also about like sitting back and having these conversations about what could it be like, and sharing it with people who maybe don't know what it could be like, and people realizing like, oh, like I didn't know that's what would go down if socialism took over. So like, let's talk about that.
Let's talk about it and talk about how everyone's life is going to be improved, even if you're in my dad was the first to go to college in the family. My granddad had a third grade education. Part of the Black migration up from the South was born. My granddad was born in South Carolina, the first. The first state to secede from the Union, right? Known for one of the most racist states, and not at the time, not now necessarily, but during slavery days, like one of the most brutal, and coming up to the North. Anyways, my dad is one of the first to go to college, gets a decent job. Okay, there are some of us that are kind of cool, but you can't. There's no way that you can get away from being affected by capitalism. And I'm just saying that to say, if we all can like open up to the idea of socialism is going to affect all of us so much because we all have, as much as one of us kind of slip through there or the ruling classes lets us, to kind of placate us or whatever.
Yeah.
We got cousins and aunties and uncles and classmates and roommates and people that are going through it, going through it. And this all affects us all. So we got to just keep talking about this, keep imagining what it'd be like.
And sharing those visions with people, right? Like if you look at the PSL's program, and what could be possible, I read a bit of it, and I'm seeing like things like a universal basic income. Okay, like wouldn't that totally transform everyone's day to day?
Yeah.
Because you would know that you had income coming in no matter what.
Oh yeah. That's just
Isn't that sounding cool?
That's just the little baby. That's just a little iffy to get it going. But yeah, you're so dope. Like even mentioning the party program, I should have mentioned the party program.
Yes, and maybe that's what we can
PSL party program
talk about.
and read it because it is just like the Black Panthers had the 10-point program. This is ours, very very similar. I would say it encompasses everything that the Black Panthers were fighting for.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. No, I think if people want to go online,
PSLweb.org.
Yes, and look at the program. You won't regret it, and maybe it'll get you thinking about something different because I really enjoyed what I read. So.
And PSL. PSLweb.org. Join if you want to look at what join is. PSLweb.org/action network if you want to just see how you can. Okay, I'm just saying this because I know we don't have that much time, and you're the one. I appreciate you. Like, if you talk about getting this, and I have to say, if you obviously you value education as we all should, and going through the PSL has been the best education I've gotten. And I was going back to school to become a social worker, and I also got a very good education with that. It was amazing, and I'm so like proud to be a social worker. I was actually just looking up the other day the NASW principles of social work and how it just goes right into socialism. I mean,
beautiful.
Like service and social justice, which is Socrates said 2,000 years before Christ, is sharing equally sharing justice. I think that's such an amazing way to define justice, is equally sharing. Justice is if we all had what we need, right?
Yeah.
But the value of the individual, the emphasis on human relationships, integrity, all these things are like socialism is. Anyways, I learned so much through the PSL because I was coming into the PSL, I was going back to school, and it was just like crazy for the two to come together.
Aligned so well.
And
that had to have felt amazing.
But that the education I got, that's not available to everyone. It was so hard for me to go back to school. Like I said, living in unregulated spaces, working full time, just everything it's just the stress of having to do that, being older and going back. But the education with PSL, free. You go to liberationschool.org. Free. All that stuff is right there.
Yeah.
And being in there. And so I do have to say, it's not just what you're reading. And I'm not just trying to PSL. No, whether you're in the PSL or not.
All kinds of things. Yeah.
Whether it's like the struggle is educating too. That's why I can say, for as much as I've grown and been educated through the PSL, it's like going out with the PSL, learning how to organize. I'm still learning. I have a lot more to learn as to be an organizer, humbly, and but just all these synapses are connecting in different ways. Like when you're talking to all these different people, meeting different people from organizations, I would have never known about Bert and Beckett if it wasn't through PSL, or I would have never met you if it was not through PSL, and then what you learn being out in the streets and seeing what it's like when you see, cops with AR-15s on the roof when you're supporting a LGBTQ rally in Downey, California. What I'm saying? You see, or when you're for May Day and you see unions coming together and workers who are like, shout out to unions and workers and labor, man. I mean, like you see like these groups who are like unions coming together with non-union people and being like talking about workers' rights. Like you just start learning so much and getting hopeful that
that workers will really have the power. Again, remember, you are making someone else rich.
Ooh.
Uh-oh. That's the truth. And so you are pretty powerful, just you yourself and your friends who are part of the working class.
That's
so
amazing.
Let's remember
Say
that.
Yo,
Yeah.
Jenna, like for real. Yo, and I appreciate that because it's like we have so much to offer. Like our class, like we were saying before, we've done all this. We've written all this.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
mostly the working class that wrote all these. Maybe
Right. We don't
a
have billionaire
sprinkling
books.
from the
I don't think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
No, but shout out, Jenna, because that's true. Like we are so well resourced. We're we all know that. We all
Yes.
know how beautiful we are and how much we
I
have
hope
to give.
so. I hope we all know that.
Capitalism doesn't want it makes capitalism wants us to think we're ugly.
And we're
Or we're lacking this and lacking that. And that if we was only to buy this, right? But we know what's up. We know how beautiful we are.
Yeah.
And how when we get together, for real.
Say that. Seriously. That's what it is, people.
Yeah.
Okay? So remember, you're beautiful. You have power. You can think about a new future that is not just part of this two-party system and capitalism. You know, there's more to life than, scraping by. And we can all come together and figure that out. And no matter what party or group or whatever you're getting into, just make sure that it has you in mind. Okay, right? And the PSL might be that party.
Could be.
Could be.
Could be.
Yeah. So I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to say a couple things. First of all, you're amazing.
Come on.
You are amazing. Ramsey
PSL.
Robinson of the PSL, mental health
that.
social worker, doing great work in the Bayview.
That's what's up.
At what is the school?
Shout out to Bayview Hunters Point. Come on.
Yeah. What is the school that you?
SFCP.
Yeah. Amazing. So thank you for being with us, talking with us. I appreciate the work you do, not only at your job, but with the PSL. So a lot of respect to you. Thank you to Eric Whittington, Denise Sullivan, the people that helped put
For
this
real,
on. Okay. Eric owns Bird and Beckett,
Come
this
on.
beautiful
Amazing
space that we
space.
get to do this in.
Amazing.
The books are good for the sound. So I just wanted to let people know that.
Ooh,
That's
game.
why we
That's
sound
game.
good.
Yeah.
And another thing I'll say is that Bird and Beckett has a really, really special event coming up. It's a literary reading in honor or to help support a family in Palestine, in Gaza, who's obviously needing some support. So that reading is going to feature writing by Munira El Najjar and Dr. Hassan Al Katrari. Sorry, I'm not doing a good job pronouncing, but maybe you could see this flyer. Okay, this reading is going to raise funds for this family and their 4 kids. This is important. This is June 25th at 7:30 p.m. That is here at Bird and Beckett, 650 Chenery Street. So if you can make it out to that and maybe bring some money, that would probably be wonderful. We would love that.
That's what's up.
Okay, so again, thank you, Eric. Thank you, Ramsey. Thank you,
Jenna.
Julia, our one
amazing.
audience member. It was nice to look at someone.
It was to know there's someone out there.
Yes. So thank you all.
Yeah.
See you next time.
Yeah.
All right. That was perfect. 10:50.